The Trilogy Podcast with Vin and Scott, putting the buff back in film buff.
Tril-Bit number 20. Who's afraid of Virginia Wolverine? A clever title made even more clever by the fact that it doesn't make any sense.
No.
We're right back at you, ladies and gentlemen. The Trilogy Podcast. I'm Vin.
And I'm Scott.
And I'm Phil.
Phil joining us because we want to give you a breakdown of the character of Wolverine. We're about to release our Wolverine Trilogy episode, and just like we did for the Spider-Man, Batman, and Avengers trilogies, we thought it would be important to just kind of break down the character because there's so much going on with all these comic book characters.
Yeah.
Yes, gentlemen?
I mean, I think he's a character who's been around for a long time. He's been a fan favorite for forever. So there's a lot of background on him, and then these movies are a little confusing with the timelines.
Sure.
You know how these superhero movies get.
To say nothing of the fact that he's a Marvel superhero, but he's in the X-Men universe, and they're not really connected.
He's also an Avenger in the comics.
Right, so there's a lot of different elements that I want to just want to break these down a little bit to answer any questions I or people like myself that aren't big superhero fans might have before we get started.
Sure.
All right? So, Phil, why don't you kind of open it up for us here? Why don't you talk a little bit about just the origin of the character of Wolverine?
So Wolverine was almost called the Badger, and he was invented in 1975 by Len Wein. He was originally a villain in the Incredible Hulk issue, in which the Hulk is fighting a creature called the Wendigo, and out of nowhere, this yellow and blue little guy comes in and starts shit with those two, and that's the first time we see him. The next time we see him is Giant Size X-Men number 1, in which he's a part of the new team of X-Men, and now his claws, which were in the first time he appeared, part of his gloves, are part of his body. So they kind of found him as they went, and especially the first time, his mask is a little bit different, but then they tried to mimic Batman the second time.
The first of very many direct similarities between Batman and Wolverine, I think we're going to talk
They're
about.
Swiss Army knife heroes.
Well, there's the thing that somebody pointed out that his mask is just two Batman kissing.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And then it's one of those things like, I just can't ever unsee that now.
Can't.
But he was an inaugural character of the X-Men. He was one of the original X-Men from the start.
The first lineup was in the 60s and consisted of Beast, Cyclops, Angel, Iceman, and Jean Grey. Now, they got canceled because no one liked the X-Men. And then in the mid
Because they said the N-word.
Yeah, a lot of times. More than you think.
A lot of anti-trans comments.
Charles, you keep using Cerebro to only find white mutants. What's going on?
What's the deal, man?
No, but honestly, that's kind of the point of Giant Size X-Men number 1. It's a re-debut with a whole new lineup, a very multi-diverse cast of new characters like Storm, Wolverine, Banshee, all of these international characters, Firestorm, a bunch of new characters that show up to rescue the old X-Men.
But from the start, was
Krakoa?
the Living Island.
The Living Island.
From the start,
Krakoa.
was he always this angsty character, though? This sort of anti-heroic type?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was always kind of a grump that no one trusted.
Even in Giant Size X-Men, when they find him, I believe he's Weapon X at that point, and working for the Canadian government.
Yes.
And then he gets the offer to go join this team to go save these other mutants, and basically tells them to fucking shove it and goes off with them. So at that point, when you first meet him there, you're like, yeah, he's already kind of gruff, like, fuck you, dude, I'm out of here.
He's already
I can do whatever I want. I'm the
shit
Wolverine.
with fucking Angel, who doesn't trust him.
Because the research that I did is that basically the Wolverine trilogy is pulling elements of Wolverine from each decade's stories of Wolverine, 70s, 80s, 90s. You gotta put it all together.
They are three of the most important stories of Wolverine.
Okay.
Yes.
Over his history.
Right. The Japanese arc was Chris Claremont and Frank Miller.
And that was the start of his solo comic,
yes,
right?
And that was the beginning of them sort of fleshing out how kind of more worldly he is. Because when you have a character that doesn't have a full memory and kind of comes out of nowhere, you can just paint
You can do him anything with him.
Yeah, and eventually, when he appeals to kids, you can make him the coolest guy ever.
You're well regarded. You were an X-Man. Fuck that, you were the X-Man.
And this is just a question about comics in general. If a different artist takes on a character like Wolverine, does that story become canon to Wolverine, or are they outliers? Meaning, if all of a sudden Joe Blow's like, I got a story about Wolverine, and this one he fights the Hulk on planet Fuck Yourself, is that now part of Wolverine's story, and that it has to be like adhered to in the further stories.
Kind of when something stupid happens 10 years later, some writer will come in and justify it.
Right.
Retcon with some sort of
course.
hand wavy plot thing.
It's always kind of clunky when they retcon something, but comic books do that all the time.
And when Stan Lee was alive and editing for Marvel, his little bubbles being like, go back to Avengers number 78 to find out what happened here.
And then you'd go there and you'd be like, just kidding, there's nothing here. Fuck you, dickhead.
He was a real rascal.
That's Stan Lee.
There's nothing, just in a picture of an explosion.
It was a trick all along, true believer.
It's a
you
picture
shouldn't
of
have
my
believed
asshole.
that it was true, true believer. This is my new character.
The asshole.
He's a villain, right? No.
Ass-Man? Yeah, Ass-Man, Jerry. I'm Cosmo Kramer, the Ass-Man.
So he's basically, he dips in and out of the world of the X-Men, meaning he has his own adventures, but then he's comes back to the X-Men and has to fight for the safety of the planet and shit.
And over time,
back and forth.
Think of it as like a band, and the lead singer kind of went solo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe not even the lead singer. Would you say is the lead singer?
He's not the lead singer. He's the guitarist with Mystique.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like if Slash going solo.
Right. Over the years, they've written him to be to mature a little bit and kind of become a leader.
All right.
They've kind of like added bits to his character. Like he always takes the young ones under his wing, like his relationship with Kitty Pryde or Jubilee.
Okay.
And he's kind of seen as like a mentor despite being like loosely affiliated with.
Is he always been in love with Jean Grey? Is that from the comics too?
Yeah. And you know what? Justice for Cyclops. I mean, what the fuck? This guy shows up, starts trying to cuck you.
Yeah.
What's going on, man?
Yeah, but he's kind of like the biggest tool of the mutants. I mean, he just has some lame fucking glasses. I mean, it'd be different if he was a cool hero.
I think his powers are pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think they made him such a little bitch with James.
Well,
Marsden.
they didn't write him right. They wrote him. They
made him
Wolverine.
like petty. And
They really
shit,
did.
where
Yeah,
it was
it's
like
not
he's
right.
not like that. He's like the Captain America of the X-Men.
Oh, really?
Kind of. Yeah, he's kind of a straight arrow. Like,
Okay. It just seems like his powers are so specific and isolated. He shoots a beam, and if he fucks it up, if you knock those glasses off, he's fucking out of control. He's blowing things up. He doesn't know.
It's a liability for sure.
I mean, it seems like a real fucking plague.
I do find that the X-Men in particular, because they are these mutations, right? They're not necessarily like powers, like they just happen to use them for good,
right?
So like there's a lot of times when villains fight them, the plan always has to do with I'll pull his glasses off and then or
get
put a helmet
of
on
this
and
mutation, right?
Yeah. But it's interesting because there's a lot more sort of strategy to X-Men mutant fights, because you can go like, all right, I can put a helmet on and then he can't use his fucking powers against me, like the way that Magneto or Juggernaut does.
Yeah. Or even the fastball special, which is when a larger member of the X-Men picks up Wolverine and throws him into a crowd of people.
Oh, is that a common move?
Usually Colossus.
Yeah, Colossus, or sometimes Beast does it.
Oh, all right.
Throw me.
Guy's got a great arm. You Americans are all crazy.
All right, so let's talk for a second about Wolverine's powers, which I think for me are a little bit confusing. Now, he was created with the bone claws. You said it was it was a glove at first, just a glove.
So his power,
he was a bit of a retcon because the whole thing was he didn't know his story. He didn't really remember his past. So you kind of find that out later.
Yes. So in the beginning,
so it's kind of a retcon.
Yeah, in the beginning. In the beginning.
Sounded racial.
Yeah, okay. In the beginning of Wolverine's thing, he has heightened senses, quick healing, and he has the claws.
All right.
And then an adamantium skeleton that we later found out was put
And
there.
he can sniff stuff.
He can sniff stuff.
He can sniff stuff.
Hear stuff, and he's
a good
hunter.
tracker.
Yeah,
He's a good hunter.
So hold on.
Yeah.
In the beginning, he had the metal inside of him. He didn't just have the bones.
No. So he had bones, but I don't believe. I think before he had that procedure, he didn't have claws.
Yeah.
Okay,
Like,
so that was
originally.
retcon to illustrate that he still had the claws before the
that was
adamantium.
part of his mutation.
Okay.
In the 90s, Magneto...
He just got metal on top of his bone.
Okay, so that he wasn't written that way with the bone claws.
No.
He finally pissed off Magneto enough where Magneto was like, I'm going to rip your fucking bones out. And then he ripped all the metal. And then they realized, oh, he's got bone claws.
He's got
so
bone
that was their
claws.
way of retcon.
Okay, because that's confusing. I'm going to say it's a little confusing in these movies. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah,
They
true.
don't take a lot of time to explain anything.
Right.
Nope. These more than I would say the MCU movies that we've watched.
Yeah.
These movies, you really have to have watched all the other movies.
I couldn't agree more.
Or at least like
And
the
that's gonna-
first X-Men movie that explains all this shit about Wolverine.
that's a major criticism I'm going to wind up having when we do the episode, because if you haven't seen the X-Men movie or have some passing familiarity familiarity with it, you really are
It was
lost.
a rough. They really could have done a better job at kind of like summing up what his powers were right away.
Especially since the nature of his powers figure into the plot so much of the first movie.
Why is he thrashing like that? I don't know. Why isn't he sedated? I don't know. Will he survive this? I don't know.
What's Wolverine's weakness as a superhero? What's the thing that's going to stop Wolverine?
Bad writing. Honestly, as a kid, I loved that he was kind of unstoppable, but the older I get, or the further along Wolverine's story gets, the faster his healing factor solves all of his problems.
Okay.
Yeah.
For me, it is bad writing because, like, we've seen him exploded into just a skeleton and then regenerate back.
Yeah.
We've seen him, rolled over by like a fucking steamroller. His weakness, I suppose,
Not just any tune.
yeah, no, literally that. Like, they say so. The adamantium is poison in his system, but his healing factor stalls the poison.
I mean, I know that you're different, but that doesn't change the fact that something inside you is poisoning you. You've got to check yourself into a hospital. Find out what it is. I know what it is.
In the movie community, we were really at a down point in terms of superheroes. The failure of Batman and Robin and Superman 4, people didn't care anymore. And so it was a really big deal when the first X-Men came out.
Yeah.
People had been talking about this character of Wolverine. He's not like other superheroes. He'll actually kill people. He's an anti-hero. He's a badass. And I remember there was hype about it because people that read comics were like, well, this is just the perfect superhero. But I seem to remember people saying at the time, like, he's not the most powerful mutant.
No.
He's not, you know what I mean? But we've blown him up through this trilogy. Like, he's right up there.
He's like an unstoppable brawler. I mean, like his real, power is what? His berserker rage.
Yeah.
Like when
Also,
he flies into a rage and just doesn't just tears shit apart.
Yeah,
Like,
capitalism is also his main power because he's made them so much fucking money in the last 25 years.
Well, sure.
That's Wolverine.
You're damn straight it is. Disney brought him back. They're going to make him do this till he's 90.
He's always been this angsty guy and just kind of he's always been in a way plagued by the power that he has. The fact that he can't die, has that always been sort of part of his arc, that he doesn't want to live forever. Characters that live forever often want to just die eventually.
Yes and no, because
for
the longest time he didn't really know that his memories were blocked. And suddenly he got them all back.
I mean, Wolverine's only been alive for like 175 years. I mean, that's not a crazy amount of time. I mean, it's not like a man that's thousands of years old and can't, just wants to die.
He's a bicentennial man.
Yeah.
But he still ages even though he's
slower, but he ages.
So there is still an aging aspect to his...
Yeah. I guess the idea is his cells are healing constantly.
Yeah.
It's the ship of Theseus, is it still the same Wolverine?
What was that kids movie where the people... they ate some shit from a tree and they were immortal then, and then they were just immortal, and it's a famous story, a kid story, and then they've come to grips with their immortality, and they've been around for fucking hundreds of years.
Tuck Everlasting?
Is that? Yeah, it might be Tuck Everlasting.
The family?
Yeah, the family.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
it's a good book.
Right, it is good. And I feel like that's a theme that's just been in my consciousness for a long time. The idea that if you want to live forever, well, here's the problem with that.
Yeah, right.
The
book that tries to make you feel good about dying.
Exactly.
Like
Wolverine Everlasting.
You gotta go.
Those of us that are young, like the three of us, we'd like to think we'll live forever. But, you're a decrepit mummy.
Crapping lads like us.
Biden's like, please let it come to an end.
My age still begins with a 3.
All right, Dick. That's not a very nice thing to say.
Yeah.
Boy, I tried to make us all part of the same party, and you just kicked me out of the party and smashed me like a piñata.
I kicked Phil out too.
Yeah.
Hurtful talk.
But don't worry, we have room for you in a month.
No.
Is it a month?
That's all I got.
I'll be 39.
Oh, God damn it.
He has uncharted regenerative capability. This also makes his age impossible to determine. He could very well be older than you, Professor.
What does he wind up doing, Phil? Is Old Man Logan sort of the last great story of Wolverine? Like, where does he go? Tell us some of the things that he does.
He's still around. Old Man Logan is kind of a one-off graphic novel that's like not necessarily canon.
Right.
It's
I
definitely
don't understand canon when it comes to these fucking comics and these special one-offs. I don't get it.
They're all written by people who need the characters to stay in a state of temporal grace where they can't age or change. And so then they do these one-offs because if they were to actually kill any of these, it would be murder for their wallets.
Sure.
So
Death of Superman.
Yeah. Like right now, Wolverine has a daughter. He has a son. He still gets fucked with by Sabretooth every year on his birthday in some horrible way. He's still just leading the X-Men, and at a certain point, he was in a throuple with Scott and Jean.
But they don't mention these one-offs at some point. They're not like, hey, remember 3 years ago when I died? And
well, they do.
And then I died. Now I'm back.
Hi, Lloyd. Been away, but now I'm back.
He's also in X-Men, Avengers, X-Force, fucking X Factor.
So he does join up with the Avengers at some point down the line?
Yeah.
The only reason that he wasn't in the Avengers movies is because 20th Century Fox owned the X-Men at the time the Avengers were made. They have the rights now. Presumably, we're starting to see the beginning of this crossover with this Deadpool movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, they've done little hints in the MCU. Miss Marvel, they mentioned that she's actually a mutant, which was a whole thing.
Oh, yeah, you said that. That's
because
right.
when she was created, she had to be a Inhuman because Fox still owned mutant, and anytime they created a mutant character, they could put it in a movie.
Right.
So Marvel created the Inhumans, who were given powers in a different way.
So,
it's sort of similar, but
it wasn't even so that wasn't even a Marvel call. That was an Ike Perlmutter call, who is the owner of Marvel, who's just a big old piece of shit. He's no longer with them, thank God. But he was like, if I can't have mutants, then you guys can just have Inhumans. And he got rid of mutants.
You know what? Say what you will. Like, we just did Blade a couple of episodes ago, and Blade came out around the same time, a little before the first X-Men.
3 years before?
But I'm not sure that the layman, when watching Blade, thinks of it as a superhero so much as a vampire movie.
it was like a 90s. There was a gothic feel.
Yeah,
The Matrix was right around that time, too. Leather jackets are cool.
Right.
And, you know, that shit.
That's why they chose black leather for the X-Men.
Had that dark element.
Yeah.
And it was vampire was cool in the 90s.
And it's definitely a horror element there,
Yeah.
too. Kind of like the Spawn movie in the 90s, right?
100%,
Yeah.
yeah. Because, I mean, like you said, Blade's a vampire movie. So it's not a comic book movie. You're gonna get the Anne Rice fans in there because they're all dancing with blood and shit.
that was strategic.
But I mean, what I did with it was totally different. I wanted very glamorous, very mythological vampires, and they did the opposite.
Guys, you have anything else about Wolverine?
Bub.
He stopped smoking cigars.
Just call me
in the 90s.
Blob.
Yeah.
It's really fucked up.
Very stupid. Yeah.
It's really just
no.
Oh, they had him stop smoking cigars because
in the
of
90s.
Fuck off, really.
Yep.
Stupid.
Switch to cigarettes and weed.
Yeah, I eat gummies now.
Crack. That's not better.
Just popping gummies.
We had 200 milligrams star of death.
Wolverine.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Wolverine. Just a little brief sort of cliff note, if you will, spark note on the character.
Okay.
So, yeah, get ready to enjoy a really fantastic upcoming episode of the Wolverine trilogy. But I hope this answered some of your questions, especially if you're not a superhero fan.
If you still have questions, you can find us on social media.
Yeah, just call Phil's home number, and he'll just answer.
Here it is. 973.
Wolverine.